everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going over my September wrap-up. So lately this year, I've actually been doing my book hauls and wrap-ups together. However, I ended up getting quite a bit of books in the month of September, partly because it was a month for the Stuff Your Kindle event for romance books, and they had tons of books. They had over 2,000 books for that event. I did not pick out 2,000 books, but I have a lot of things that we're going to need to go through in a longer video, so that'll be actually next week, because I also have a fun book tag that I wanted to do that I'm going to do on Thursday. So we're just going to be doing the wrap up today. It's not super long, so hopefully this video isn't going to be super long, but we're going to go through our stats and the wrap up and go all the way to my favorite book of the month. So let's jump into it. I read 7 books in the month of September for a total of 2,470 pages. So this is my lowest amount of books, but not my lowest page number, and we'll get into that as well. I did actually do some audiobook reading in the car specifically this month, but I do have over 11 hours worth of audiobooking, which I don't know if I've ever specified exactly how many hours I've done, because I don't do audiobooks every month, but this seems to be a pretty good average if I am doing audiobooks. For the reading method, getting into that, so I did actually have 3 audiobooks, 2 physical books, and 2 ebooks that I read. For the genre, we had 3 horrors, 2 romance, 1 paranormal, and 1 sci-fi. As for the book format, 5 of them were novels, 1 was a graphic novel, and 1 was a manga. I read 1 indie book versus 6 traditionally published books. As for how I got it, 4 of these are books that I have owned previous to this year. 1 is a book that I bought this year, 1 is a book that I got from the library, and 1 is an ARC. As for the age category, 5 of them were adult books, 1 was a young adult book, and 1 was a middle grade. And then for the star ratings, this is one of the highest star ratings months that I have had this year. Again, I don't know if it's just partly because I had fewer books, but they seem to have been a pretty high quality. I did have 1 3-star, 1 3.5-star, and the other 5 books were 5-star reads. So ultimately, very, very happy with that. My average rating for this month so far is a 4.5, whereas the whole year so far is a 3.7, I want to say. So this month was obviously a high quality month. And then because we only have 7 books, we're going to get into it. We're going to start with my least favorite book of the month, which was still a 3-star, and then we're going to move up to my favorite book of the month. So the first one, the 3-star that we have here, was actually a reread for me. This was A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. I used to own these books and actually unhauled them last year sometime, I'm pretty sure. So this is one of the ones that I borrowed from my library as an audiobook. I will say I really did like the audiobook narrator, and this is an adult romance. It is a royal romance, sort of a Cinderella retelling. I read this for a book club that Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe was running, and I was in the discussion with her and another person as well. And these are books, I've read the entire series. You guys have heard me talk about the novellas to the series earlier this year, because I read them this year. I have officially finished this series, and this was a reread. I just don't think these have some of the tropes that I particularly like in romance. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. I have actually quite a few friends on Goodreads and through BookTube that really, really like these books, especially this one. And I just think there's some things that I personally don't. One of the big things in this story is the fact that our main guy character is a prince, which is not a big deal, but when he goes to find our main female character, Naledi, who is living in the United States, working as a grad student, trying to learn epidemiology and all this kind of stuff, he is mistaken for a coworker, a new coworker that's supposed to be coming in, and he lets her believe that for over half of the book. He doesn't like tell her who he is and why he's in this picture for so long. And that's not to say that you can't have these sort of like secret identity sort of tropes and stuff, but I think one of my biggest issues with it is the fact that they get very intimate, physically intimate, while that is happening multiple times. And it's one of those things where I just like would be yelling at him like, hey, like you, like why are you doing this to her? You need to tell her the truth. But for these characters, especially him when he's having the secret, it would just sort of feel like the physical urges overtook any sort of logic he had in his brain. And so that was always a little bit frustrating. And then one thing that I have noticed, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before with Alyssa Cole's writing style for the books that I've read, especially in the Reluctant Royals series, we have a lot of like good pacing and writing, especially at the beginning of the book, even though I didn't like his lying and things like that. But then as we get further into the story, it seems like all the endings are very rushed, and that was the same in this one here. We have a pretty good pacing for the first half, even though he is, you know, having this hidden identity sort of thing. And then near the second half of the book, we change locations and we change settings, and it feels like a whole new element is brought in, a very intriguing element, but it's never fully fleshed out. And then everything that happens near the end of the story is just very rushed, like the resolution between the relationship, all this kind of stuff. So while I do think these books are very fun and sort of addicting, because I have read every single one in this series, this is one of my least favorite of the series. And so they're not bad, but I do have issues with them. So that's why it is a pretty solid 3-star for me. Moving into my 3.5 stars, I have my arc that I read for this month, which is The Summer Hikaru Died by Moku Moku Ren. This is the first volume. I actually am excited to see where this is going to go. Like, I know I talked about that the second volume is going to come out in the last quarter of 2023 in like the video of new releases that I talked about. Like, I am excited to see where this is going to go. This is a manga, obviously, and it is about a boy who has a friend who apparently goes into this foresty area, and this happens before the book starts, one day, and he comes back wrong. And we sort of find out quite early that this boy knows something is wrong. He knows his friend is probably dead and that this is something that has taken over his body. I was expecting a little bit more mystery surrounding that just based on the summary. There's not as much mystery surrounding that as there is like, what are they going to do going forward with this? Like, I don't know what the consequences are of this. There are also hints, bits and pieces of this, our main character, like having been in love with his friend, like in an LGBTQ way. And they haven't fully fleshed that out yet either. So like, it's a 3.5 because I was hoping for a little bit more like intrigue behind the like mystery aspect, and we haven't quite gotten there. It was just sort of like stated as a fact quite early in the story, but I am very curious to see where this is going to go, see how this friendship relationship potential is going to flesh out, especially because like this other character is obviously not human anymore. Like, where is this going? And then everything else is a 5-star. So the first one we're going to talk about is It by Stephen King. This is a reread for me, like my 9th or 10th reread, like a reread. I also am doing the Stephen King vlog that I have talked about before on my channel. I have posted one before, the 1970s. This is for the 1980s. I do have some more books I need to read by the end of the year because I really want to get one more vlog out for you guys by the end of the year. So I'm not going to go like into like super detail, but I do think this is a lower 5-star for me now because I am now 33. I first read this when I was probably like 12, 13, something around there. Let's just say 13. It's been like 20 years since the first time I read this. This was also written in the 80s. It's been like an extra 20 years since that originally was like written and everything like that. There are some very problematic elements in this book. And now being 33, I'm very much able to see just how much. However, I really do love it for the horror aspects. Like, Pennywise as a horror creature, as an antagonist in a story is perfect. Like, it is so well done that way, even now still. I do also think when I first read this, I was closer in age to the younger characters in here, and those sort of horror elements that are there for those younger characters definitely hit more when I was younger than now, but like still in a really, really good way. I also like the structure of this story. I like how, especially near the end, when we transfer back and forth between like the past when they were kids to the present day when they're adults, it transitions during a sentence, like through a sentence. And I really, really liked that structure. I have always liked that structure. This is a very long book. It is over 1,000 pages. I do think, especially nowadays with some of the problematic elements that are in here, because we do have problematic elements for like racism and homophobia and fat phobia, and like there's quite a bit in here that could have just very easily been taken out and still retained the bulk of the story. It could have been cut down a bit, but I do still think this is my favorite Stephen King that I've ever read so far. I do think the movies are very, very good adaptations, and because I read this, I have been wanting to watch them. I actually watched the part 1 of the new movies. Part 1 last night. I'll probably watch part 2 later today. But yeah, low 5-star, but for all its faults, especially from like when it was written, it's still so good. My next 5-star is Something is Killing the Children, Volume 3 by James Tynion IV. This was a really, really good continuation of the Something is Killing the Children comic series. This is Volume 3. This one actually finishes sort of like what I feel like is the first arc in this series, but I know there is more after this, so I am very curious to see where it is going to go. But this is a like horror series about invisible-ish monsters, or at least to the adults they're invisible, killing children. So there is blood and gore. The art style is quite good for the series, but it's a little bit like sketchy and a little dark. I guess, like I said, it is good for the series. I do really like it in that way. I really want to read more. It was a very fast-paced read. We're getting into a lot more of like what, like our main character here is Erica Slaughter, and like where her background is, where she comes from, what that means for her. And so even though this did finish like the first main arc, I need to read more. Like I need to read more. I really, really love these ones. The next 5 stars I have here is Bridge of Souls by V.E. Schwab. This is the 3rd and final book in the Cassidy Blake series, which is her middle grade paranormal ghosty series. I really did like this one a lot. I listened to this one on audiobook as well. Actually, I think I listened to the entire book series of this on audio, even though I have all the physical ones now. It's a really, really well done series. There are some really legitimately creepy, sort of scary parts, even though it is middle grade. So like it's not going to be overly spooky or like horror filled, but it is perfectly spooky for middle grade readers, and I really, really enjoy them. I like the sort of friendship aspects that are pulled into here as well. One thing I will say, even though this book was published like early-ish 2021, so I have no idea how it went through revisions and things like that, there are quite a few Harry Potter references in here that really don't need to be in here, and I'm pretty sure there are some in every single book in this series, and so it was like a running thing, like a running thread through it. So yeah, that I think was the only thing that took me out of the story a little bit, was anytime that kind of stuff would pop up. But if we took all that out, it would still be an amazing story for a middle grade paranormal horror friendship. Like there's so much going on in here that I do really, really love it. But just be aware that that is in here. My next 5 star was the Heartbreak Handshake by J.R. Hart. This is an indie romance, LGBTQ romance, that I got during not this Stuff Your Kindle event, obviously, but the one before that, and I'm really glad I did. It's part of the like Clover Hill romance series, but like they're all individual ones that you can just read in any order. But I really, really liked this one. It is only like 160 something pages, very quick to read. We have 2 characters. One is Paxton, who is a guy who is autistic and is having sort of troubles like relating to other people, especially during dating. And then the other one is Remy, who is non-binary, asexual, and has ADHD. They are back in town, sort of just like stopping off at their mom's house in the middle of like figuring out what they want to do with their life. They're very into art, and their mom sets them up on a date with Paxton, and they agree to sort of like do fake dating to get her off of their backs. And I really liked the dynamic between these characters. I really liked the representation and how that was handled and how it was discussed. And so it was a very quick read. Like I said, less than 200 pages. Not quite an abrupt ending. Like, I really wish there would have been more, but I think it's just because I love the characters and the like relationship and everything that was happening in the story so much. Like, I can't fault it for being only 160 something pages. I really liked the story. I really want to try more from this author as well, just because I liked how it was handled. Like, I liked the characters feeling like people and it not just feeling like stereotypes. Like, they had all these different labels, but the way that they were portrayed felt very real, and so the whole story felt very real. And then finally, the last book I have here, my favorite book of the month. I don't think I could have predicted this was my favorite book of the month when I was on my TBR, because this was one that got put on my TBR, but it's The Stone Rose by Jacqueline Rayner. This is a Doctor Who novel. I also listened to this on audiobook, and David Tennant does the narration. That could have helped, but I think part of the reason this is my favorite book of the month is that it 100% feels like a Doctor Who episode that just like didn't get put into like the TV show format. I really liked the characters. They felt exactly like who you expect them to be. We do obviously have the Doctor, and then we also have Rose Tyler. Mickey's in it for a little bit, and so like the characters that we see feel like how they are in the show. And then we obviously have some other characters, because this is one that takes us into history. It's part of the history collection. Takes us back in time to a history, like I think it's like a Roman Empire sort of setting. And then more stuff happens from there even. And so all the little twists and turns and different revelations that we had here were just so much fun and felt very Doctor Who. This actually kicked off a rewatch of Doctor Who for me. So I have also been rewatching Doctor Who in between reading books and doing things. So yeah, it was also very short, only a couple hours on audiobook, and I really liked it, and makes me want to read more of these sort of ones, especially if David Tennant or like the characters are going to be narrating, but also checking out more of this author's work as well. And so that should be everything for the wrap up. Hopefully short and sweet, at least compared to like when I put them with my book hauls. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!